Good afternoon, evening. I think this is when it'll be coming out. But today is Saturday, the 20th of November. And what a surprise, Pastor Gene, that we have a Saturday episode. But I think it was important for us to do so, with the current situations that are unfolding before our very eyes. All right, let's get started. Welcome to the Dear Church podcast, where we exist to fill your ears and your minds with the study of God to see the world as disciples of Christ. My name is Sam Young.
And I'm Eugene Kim.
And Pastor Gene, today the reason for this special Saturday episode is because something very polarizing has happened over this weekend, yesterday to be exact, and that is the decision in the Kyle Rittenhouse trial. I know we discussed this about 2 weeks ago, but because of how polarizing it is and because of the amount of biased news that we see in the mainstream media, I thought it'd be important to, to the best of our ability, share the facts of what we have read, because we've both read across the board, you more than myself, and to give some commentary that is founded on a Christian worldview. Is that okay?
That's great. You can't mess up. We're just releasing this, right?
Yes.
So this one will have no edits.
Wow.
Yeah,
this is scary for me.
Yeah, you got to hide your thoughts.
I definitely do. But, as this news is blowing up, I know that our listeners are not living under a rock. I'm sure there's articles that they've read, tweets, Instagram posts that they've seen already. And as we as individuals are forming our thoughts on the verdict of this case, I wanted to guide our church, our listeners, to see this from a Christian worldview. So hopefully we can do that. So I thought it'd be helpful, rather, if we kind of talked about the overview of what happened, of the trial, of the verdict, and just kind of the responses that we've seen in social media and on the news, if that's all right with you.
Okay.
Just starting with the overview. In the days following the shooting of Jacob Blake by a police officer last year, 2020, there were riots, protests that were happening in the city of Wisconsin where this happened.
City of Kenosha. Wisconsin, yeah.
Kenosha, Wisconsin. And I do want to just give some quick context of the Jacob Blake shooting of last year. In July of 2020, there was a warrant that was issued. There was a warrant that was issued for the arrest of Jacob Blake on charges of third-degree sexual assault, criminal trespass, and disorderly conduct. And in August of that same year, the woman who filed the complaint called 911 to report that Jacob Blake was at her home. Police officers responded and tried to arrest Jacob Blake. They tried twice to use a taser gun, and video showed that Blake was armed with a knife and made motion towards the officer with the knife, prompting the officer to fire. Actually, the officer wasn't even charged because the state saw that this was within the boundaries of the line of duty. And so, in the days following the shooting of Jacob Blake, we saw riots and protests all over the country. And this is where we find ourselves talking about Kyle Rittenhouse. Would you like to give any insight?
What? No, I mean, it's just what it is. Actually, I wasn't listening.
Okay, I'll do light editing.
No edit. No, I saw what you said because I have it in front of me. Yeah, I mean, the whole Jacob Blake thing, I think we talked about it when it first came out,
Yep.
He allegedly had already, made threats and come and abused his, the current woman that he, I guess, trespassed. And then allegedly assaulted her sexually. And so those are things that happened. And then when the police were called, he came, he resisted arrest. And then he had a knife in his hand. He was shot on the back 7 times. And then, all of this stuff happened after.
He's paralyzed now.
Yeah, he's paralyzed. Yeah. He did come out in an interview saying, I saw him in a TV interview saying, he shouldn't have done what he did. But I think that was quickly scrubbed. And then we have now the sitting president and vice president who had back then, who were just candidates for the presidency, um, like give them a house call and so things like visit them and things like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, all that stuff is happening. This is in the background. And then we've had protests that erupted because of that.
Yep.
And yeah, and this is where Kyle Rittenhouse comes into the picture.
Yeah. So Kyle Rittenhouse, who was at the time 17 years old, traveled from his home across the border to Kenosha, Wisconsin, in order to protect businesses from being looted and destroyed by rioters. And he was responding to pleas that were on social media to protect businesses during these riots. Um, and, interestingly enough, before the shooting, there was an interview that was done with Kyle Rittenhouse. And he was just, a young man that no one knew at the time. And this is what he said. He said, "So people are getting injured, and our job is to protect this business. And part of my job is to also help people. If there is somebody hurt, I'm running into harm's way. That's why I have my rifle, because I can protect myself, obviously, but I also have my med kit." The three people that he shot were Joseph Rosenbaum, Anthony Huber, and Gage Grosskreutz. The first two he fatally shot, and Gage Grosskreutz he shot in the bicep, I believe. Um, before we just simply call them victims of a murder, I just wanted to give some context of who these people were. Joseph Rosenbaum, in Arizona, he was sentenced to a decade in prison on child molestation. Molestation?
Hmm.
On child molestation charges. Open case of misdemeanor bail jumping, misdemeanor cases for battery, domestic abuse, or disorderly conduct, domestic abuse. Anthony Huber, he was a domestic abuse repeater, convicted of domestic abuse and disorderly conduct, served in prison for choking his brother. Gage Grosskreutz, criminal misdemeanor in 2016 for being armed with a firearm while intoxicated. And I'm not just, spitting these facts just to say that they deserve death in this way or anything like that, or being shot or anything like that. But what I am saying is the full story is different than the picture that the media is trying to portray, of these helpless victims that are being shot by this crazy white supremacist boy that has an agenda to kill these innocent victims. And so I just wanted to get that out there, just so that we have a clearer picture of what happened rather than just kind of this foggy, blurry one that the media is spoon feeding us.
Okay, sure.
So could you just kind of fill us in possibly of what happened that night, Pastor Eugene?
Yeah, I don't know if everybody's been following, but the basic thing that people think they understand is that Rittenhouse took a gun across state lines. Again, that's false. Uh, um, and then what he did was he incited violence. Again, that's false. Or he was there um, like uninvited. Again, that's false too. But all these narratives are going out there. And I think what people are trying to find out is what then actually happened.
Yep.
So then the people that know what happened are, we would hope and presume, and this time presume correctly, are people in the jury, people in the courthouse, because all the facts were presented there.
Yep.
So he was there. He was invited. His father is in Kenosha, right?
Yep.
And so he's going there. He is armed. Obviously, as everyone knows, he does have a med kit. He does have like a fire extinguisher. There are pictures of him like with a group of other people cleaning up graffiti that was left behind from the protests before. And so there's a bunch of stuff happening. But let's get to the simple stuff.
Yeah.
Let's get to the main stuff without being, convoluting it too much. He's accused of killing two people and injuring one.
Yep.
Again, there's misinformation out there, and that's he killed 3 black people. That's not true.
I didn't even know that was.
It's
thing
still
that
being
people
reported
Wow.
across the world. In Brazil, in the UK, I saw.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, that Rittenhouse killed 3 black people, and then he was acquitted of all charges. All this is completely false. And so there are like really, really wrong stuff going out there. And so, no, that's not the case. These are 4 white people. And like you said, 3 of them had convictions. They're all convicted felons. And one was actually a child rapist who raped and was convicted of rape like of 9 to 14-year-old boys. Yeah, that's Rosenbaum, by the way. And so those are the facts of the case. These are the people that are there. And then now we have video evidence
Yep.
of what actually happened that night. We have FBI surveillance cam,
Mhm.
and most recently we found out that there's actual HD footage,
Drone footage, right?
yeah, that the prosecutor kept from the defense team. But yeah, and things like that. So there's a lot of stuff happening. But basically, what he's been accused of and what he is on trial for, basically, there were multiple charges, but basically is for reckless violence and the killing of 2 people,
Yep.
and injuring a third.
Yep. So just like you said, his accusations were first degree intentional homicide, first degree reckless homicide, attempted first degree intentional homicide, 2 counts of first degree reckless endangerment for firing at an unknown man who tried to kick him in the face, and also allegedly disregarding the fact that a reporter was standing behind Rosenbaum when he shot him. And the last count was the count of possession of a dangerous weapon by a person under 18. Those were the accusations that he was on trial for.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think, like you said, there are video clips online that you can see yourself. And it is pretty, it's disturbing. I mean, when anyone kills somebody, I think it's disturbing. But I guess what Kyle Rittenhouse argued is that he shot the men in self-defense.
Mm-hmm.
And in the state of Wisconsin, attorneys must show the jurors that he, with reason, believed his life was in danger and that the amount of force that he used was reasonable.
Mm-hmm.
The prosecution actually disagreed and said when the defendant provokes the incident, he loses the right to self-defense. You cannot claim self-defense over a danger you create. However, we saw the verdict come out yesterday, Friday, not guilty, acquitted of all charges. And it was in self-defense. And I wanted to just kind of talk about some of the reasons why he was acquitted of all the charges, because people just think, oh, this is an evil system. He only had a fair trial because he was white. And the judge was on their side. The New York Times and other newspapers went after the judge because they had nothing else to go after.
Mm-hmm.
But here are some of the reasons why, at least in my research, the verdict was not guilty.
Mm-hmm.
Joseph Rosenbaum, the first person that he shot, had threatened Rittenhouse earlier that night, chased him, threw a plastic bag at him, missed, and lunged for his gun.
Mm-hmm.
And he was fatally shot 4 times.
Mm-hmm.
Anthony Huber hit him with a skateboard on the neck, holding it like a baseball bat,
Mm-hmm.
lunged for his gun,
Mm-hmm.
was shot in the stomach, or chest rather, I'm sorry. And Gage Grosskreutz was armed with a pistol and was pointing it at Rittenhouse when he was shot. And these 3, like you said, are white, just to be sure, because there's a lot of, like you said, a lot of arguments going out there and false narratives going out there that he was a white supremacist,
Mm-hmm.
that he was a racist. But that is, you can't prove that in court with what we have.
Mm-hmm.
Any comments?
No. This is what happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in the end, he was exonerated. He was acquitted of all charges. And I think it's the response that we're more
Yep.
worried about. So if you don't know the facts of the case, you could always look at it. One of the things that I have mentioned to the leaders of our church too is that what most of our leaders are doing, which I'm very thankful for, is they're not looking at legacy media for facts. If anything, you look at legacy media for commentary, but you don't look at them for facts. It's a sad state of affairs, I suppose, but it is reality. So if you want facts, I wouldn't go to any legacy media, and that includes CNN, MSNBC, and Fox. But most people got their news from independent sources. I even heard people getting their news from Reddit. There are people who just follow independent journalists online, and they're able to find out the facts that way. People saw live, in the case, like for me, the live recording of the case.
Yeah.
The broadcasting of the case, and I was able to see a lot of that, so I'm very thankful for that.
Mm-hmm.
And so people are trying to get the news the best way they can, because if with a lack of information, it's hard to make good judgments. In fact, it's impossible, I would say, to make a good judgment if you don't have the right information.
Right.
So this is the information that's out. People in the jury understand that That's why the gun charge was dismissed. Did you talk about that?
I didn't, but I definitely wanted to talk about that.
Yeah, why don't you talk about that?
Right. So there was a count of possession of a dangerous weapon by a person under the age of 18. From my research under Wisconsin law, any person under 18 years of age who possesses or goes armed with a dangerous weapon is guilty of a Class A misdemeanor. But there is a subsection that adds this section applies only to a person under 18 years of age who possesses or is armed with a rifle or shotgun if the person is in violation of S 941.28. So the question is, what is S 941.28? The subsections state that it would only be illegal if that individual is armed with a short-barreled rifle, which is defined as a rifle having one or more barrels, having a length of less than 16 inches, and a rifle having an overall length of less than 26 inches, which is why the judge actually took away this accusation.
Yeah, because it it didn't obviously go against the requirements that were listed out in section 941.28, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that gun charge was dismissed.
So I guess, in conversation, people might ask, well, I get that these accusations, he was not guilty, but wasn't he still in the wrong being there? He shouldn't have been there. He's a 17-year-old, and he lied about being an EMT. Like he didn't know what he was doing. Why was he even there? And it just escalated the situation where, sure, it was self-defense, but he could have prevented it by not being there. What would we kind of think about that?
Well, I think even before we get into that, I think maybe there are a few of us. I don't know about if there are a lot of us, but a few of us that are listening that that don't understand maybe why this wasn't a racist case. So a lot of people are saying it's because of white supremacy.
Right.
I mean, if you watch people like Joy Reid comment, she thinks it's because it's white supremacy. She's an analyst on MSNBC. Yeah, some other people are saying this is because of white supremacy. Kyle Rittenhouse was freed, right, or acquitted of these charges. If it was a black person, they would have never got that same justice. It's also because of white tears, and I get I have a lot of time, so I do listen to some of these analysts talk, and yeah, I mean, obviously that's not true. Just today, another person was acquitted.
Yeah.
You know about this
From execution, right?
No, this person. Yeah. What is this? I should find out exactly. Where is this? This is Andrew Coffey the Fourth.
Yes.
He's not found guilty on all counts of murder, attempted first-degree murder, and I'm sure some of you already know about this, so that's fine. Yeah, he was charged with the murder of his girlfriend after, she was caught in the crossfire between him and the cops or the police, and so he was, he was found not guilty of murder.
Was he sentenced to? Was that capital punishment or no? Was that a different?
I mean, no. I mean, obviously, this would have been if he was right. So he's being tried for first-degree murder. So he was also. So I mean, he was black and he didn't. That kind of thing. So I think more than the race part, we have to see if was this person innocent. Well, I mean, was this person innocent?
Mm-hmm.
Was it really self-defense? And that's what they needed to prove. And then the way our system works is that there is a presumption of innocence unless proven guilty.
Yes.
You have to have a reasonable, you have to go beyond the reasonable doubt to get this guy on these charges. And that's the way our justice system works. Our justice system is inclined toward, the defendant because that's what we believe is good.
Yeah.
That's always been the case. You can't just go around saying whoever accuses someone of murder should just be killed just because someone accuses you of murder, right?
Yeah.
The accusation doesn't make you guilty. You have to prove that guilt first. And I'm afraid some of that is being lost and that people are now accusing people of murder without any evidence just because of, let's say, time, place, situation, circumstance. So Kyle Rittenhouse just happened to be there. And because he was there, he must be guilty, that kind of thing, without looking at any of the evidence, which is not the way you should do any kind of judgment. Hopefully, anybody that thinks like that will never be in any position where they have like a life in their hands.
So, like you said, I wanted to talk about the responses to the verdict of this case. Um, there was a comparison that I saw on Instagram that compared Kyle Rittenhouse to Tamir Rice, who was a 12-year-old in a playground with a toy gun, who was shot and killed by police within seconds, comparing it to Kyle, who's 17 years old at a riot with an assault rifle, shot three people, killing two, not apprehended by police for almost 2 hours. Those are not the same things.
Yeah, I mean, I think the comparison is made because they believe that if it was a white boy, he wouldn't have been shot.
Right,
because
right,
it's a
right.
black boy.
So it's a race
he was
thing
shot.
again.
It's a race thing, really. And I've been following like these cases. Tamir Rice was a big case. He was a 12-year-old boy. That's true. There's actually video footage of him walking around holding a pistol. It wasn't a toy gun. It was a pellet gun.
Uh-huh.
And he made it look like a real gun. So he took away all the things that show that it's a toy or it's not a real gun. Like usually they have like orange.
Mm-hmm.
It's like painted orange at the tip of the gun and things like that. If
Right,
you paint
right.
black over it, you can't really tell.
Right,
And at the time, he was pointing at people. Again, I'm not saying he should have been shot.
right.
I think it was a very sad state of affairs. It's very, very unfortunate. It's very sad. But, these are the facts of the case. That's exactly what he was doing. And there's video evidence of him doing that. The police, instead of trying to talk down this little boy, shot him.
Yep.
And he was killed, right? Could the police have done better? And then maybe he could have lived, I think, sure. I mean, that's a discussion that people could have, but, it's not as though this was some kind of like water pistol that he held.
Yeah.
And the cop, just because he's black, shot him dead.
Right, right.
So some of the nuances of the cases are lost because we just want to see one narrative, and that's the dangerous part. Sometimes it could be complex, sometimes it could be troubling, sometimes it could be clear cut. Like I think the Rittenhouse case is pretty clear cut. It was self-defense. If you look at the video surveillance camera footage, it's very clear cut. The guy was running away from his assailants as fast as he could. He was yelling friendly, right? He was yelling out he's friendly, and the other guys are chasing him saying, I'm going to effing murder you, right?
Yep.
I'm going to kill you.
Yeah.
That's really hard to say like he did it out of malice or he wanted to kill people. I see zero evidence of that. And I think the jury saw that too, because it's a pretty clear cut and dry case of self-defense. However, I think the concern is, even though it's a clear cut and dry case, how come the masses don't see it? How come everybody doesn't see that? That's troubling, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's what troubles a lot of people. What do we do when we see certain people just jump on this bandwagon narrative that everything is racist, everything is white supremacist? How do we respond to people like that? And how should we look at that? Or are there any dangers that we could be potentially be in, right?
Yeah.
And so those are things that I think we can continually ask ourselves, so we're not also guilty of the things that we're accusing other people of.
I guess so. How can we do that?
I mentioned it when we did our podcast like 2 weeks ago, that we shouldn't jump to conclusions. There's always a presumption of innocence, before someone is found guilty, right? Presumed innocent before guilty, right? And so we want to keep that kind of mindset when we see someone. Obviously, there's some gross injustices that we see, and there's evidence right out there for us to see.
Yeah.
But even then, there can be new evidence that comes out that would show you perhaps you didn't see the full picture, right? And things like that. Like in George Floyd's case, now we know that he was hopped up on fentanyl that could have killed a large animal. There was video evidence, video capture that was like 20 plus minutes long or 40 minutes long before the famous 8-minute clips that we saw. There's all this stuff that comes out basically. And they're like pieces of like fentanyl pills on the floor of the police car, right? And things like that. There's all this stuff that comes out after. But a lot of people don't want to know that. They don't care about that because it's about the narrative. And if that's the case, then what you really don't want is justice. You don't want justice. You want to get to an end point because you believe the ends justify the means.
Mm-hmm.
And that is distinctly unchristian. So if you want to get to a place without knowing facts, without getting justice, true justice, meaning it's not evidence based. It's not because you just want to blame everything on some kind of overall corruption of the system or something to that effect.
Right.
It has nothing to do with individual justice. In fact, most of social justice has a lot to do with individual injustice. And you can quote me on that one. But it is a sad reality when people just want to fit everything into a narrative, and when it doesn't fit, they don't turn back. They just keep on doubling down, which is what we see media across the world doing.
Yeah.
And that's why people are turning away from legacy media, big media, into just following independent sources. And they're finding out from places like Reddit, which is kind of sad. Like, how do you even know that's real? It's just what people are saying. People are turning to Twitter, and I've said, like, Twitter is the sewage of the internet. Like, all the bad stuff goes through Twitter.
True.
Yeah. But it's rough. It's rough because if he is, and he was acquitted, if he is innocent, then all the stuff that everybody had been saying for the last year, they're now culpable of. They're culpable of slander, which is what I did mention. But the Gospel Coalition put out an article in August putting Dylan Roof, who is a white supremacist and a murderer, with Kyle Rittenhouse.
Yep.
They put him in the same page. And then when he was confronted about it, he just said something like, "You're not acknowledging my trauma." But if you're traumatized over false evidence, then shouldn't you be, held accountable?
Yeah.
I mean, if I never tried to kill you, right? If I never tried to kill you, but you think in your mind that I tried to kill you and you're traumatized over it, you should be made aware I never tried to kill you, right? Yeah. But if you come back to me, well, you're not acknowledging my trauma, there's something wrong with that response, in my opinion. This person should have never been a writer or a contributor or even a board member of the Gospel Coalition. Hopefully this person will be held accountable. And, I am hoping that they turn around, they repent for their slander, and they take this article out of their archives.
It's still up as of right now. I'm looking at it right now.
It's still up. Yeah, I've been looking since last night. It's still up.
Yeah, so they have not taken it down. I guess have they made a statement about this?
No, I don't think recently they haven't. Maybe I was thinking maybe they're hoping it's just gonna go away. But this kind of stuff stays with people.
Yeah,
and people didn't know this about the Gospel Coalition. So after this, this whole court hearing, it came back into the Twitter sphere, and so people, the Christian group have been sharing it, that this is still up. Can you believe it? It's been over a year and they still didn't take it down. Yeah, maybe they're hoping that it's just going to go away.
The response has been crazy, to say the least. BLM was in the streets of Brooklyn, chanting, "Every city, every town, burn the precinct to the ground," after the Rittenhouse verdict. People are tweeting death threats to Kyle Rittenhouse on Twitter. I saw one tweet that said, "So who's going to take one for the team and murder Kyle Rittenhouse? Hopefully in the next 24 to 48 hours, fingers crossed." So people are responding in crazy ways. And, for me too, when I go on Instagram, I just see misinformation everywhere. I see people emotionally responding, and just being angry about the verdict, talking about how the system has failed. And it's just, I don't even know what to think at this point. And so I think, for us, one of the main reasons why we did this episode is so that our listeners can be informed about what's going on and make the wise choices, and also to pray. But I guess, what do we do now that we know this and have this information, seeing all of this misinformation, seeing all this emotional response? What do we do as Christians?
Well, yeah, I think your response is good. We should continue to keep in prayer And we should be wise. Again, we need to be wise as serpents, but also innocent as doves.
Yeah.
These are things that Jesus commands us. We should be both. We just can't get our news from, let's say, the places we got it
Instagram.
classically, traditionally. Instagram, no.
Instagram is a new one.
Yeah. But there are people now that it's because people have been given platforms. And then so when you're given a platform, people automatically assume that you are an authority or an expert in the field. Like Colin Kaepernick yesterday tweeted, and I quote, "We just witnessed a system built on white supremacy validate the terroristic acts of a white supremacist," unquote. And then he goes on to say that that's why we need to abolish the system, things like that. Our boy, Daryl B. Harrison, he responded to that.
Oh.
Yeah, he said, when you begin to understand that white supremacy is anything that is not black supremacy, then you'll begin to understand the logic behind this comment by Kaepernick. It's really not complicated at all. White supremacy, simply put, is anything that is not black supremacy. And so when people just see it simply black and white, if I just don't get my way, then it must be white supremacy.
Yeah.
And that Daryl Harrison is pointing that out. It goes to show people who are speaking out knowing that they're going to get hated on. People are going to try to cancel them. I suppose that's today's vernacular, right?
Mm-hmm.
But people are receiving death threats, like the judge Schroeder.
Yep.
He's gotten death threats. He's gotten death threats not only for himself but for his grandchildren. Like when they go to school, like, you better watch your grandkids, and we're gonna kill them and things like that.
Terrible.
Yeah, we know Kyle Rittenhouse has had death threats already. People are saying, look, even if you have to go to jail for life, I think it's worth it. You got to kill him. People are putting that in Twitter. Again, Twitter is the sewage of the internet. So you have all these crazies put stuff on. But that's the thing about when people are given a platform, obviously we're going to see the abuse of that.
Yeah.
But when people are given an additional platform on top of that, let's say you're like Colin Kaepernick and then you get a Netflix special, that kind of thing. That's what's really disturbing, because when people are given platforms, what we're saying is that they are elevated to a degree where people will notice and take note of them, right?
Yeah.
So your kids, the kids that you're teaching in youth group, they'll be the ones listening to these people.
Right.
And even though they're illogical as a young child who's very impressionable, that's not what they're going to think. They're going to think this person has a platform and he kind of makes sense. He has charisma, and I want to be like that. I want to have that kind of influence, And so that's what we want to warn people against. And if you are already warned and you are like listening to this and thinking, wow, I already know all of this, so why do I have to listen to it again? I think it's because we need to continue to remind ourselves of the truth, and reminding ourselves of the truth is also reminding ourselves of the dangers that are out there, that are constantly trying to just, pummel us, bring the doors down. We're getting bombarded over and over again, I'm reminded of how the legacy media, like what we used to call mainstream media, but the legacy media would always say, like, this is the big lie. I've seen senators use that phrase, the big lie. This is the big lie. This is what the right is doing. This is the big lie of the right, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know where that phraseology comes from?
No.
It comes from Hitler. Hitler said that. And so it's so funny and ironic that they would use Hitler's tactics. Anyway, but the whole point is you continue to repeat a big lie, people will be bound to believe it. You just have to say it louder. If I go, Sam, your hair is pink. And you're like, no, it's not, right?
Yeah.
But if I keep on saying it, no, but Sam, your hair is pink. And I just say it louder and louder, maybe one day you'll believe that your hair is pink. And so far, we see that some people actually, go against it. So some people are tired because we keep on saying Sam's hair isn't pink. It's actually dark brown. And it's ridiculous that you think it's pink. And some people might be like, well, I'm tired of you saying that his hair is dark brown because it's pretty evident that it is. It's like, well, maybe, but we're also saying it because people keep on saying louder and louder that your hair is pink.
Yeah.
I know I'm using this metaphor but it really has a lot to do with the truth that's out there. And there are a lot of people that have fallen for it, this narrative that everything is white supremacist. And so that just basically means, and I like what Daryl Harrison said, it basically means anything that doesn't fit their narrative is white supremacist.
Yeah.
So even if you're a black person or you're a person of color or whatever intersectionality that's there, if you don't agree with this narrative, then it must be because you're white supremacist.
Yeah.
Which is ridiculous on its head. But it leads us to a place where we are, where we see an innocent man, a boy at the time, but an innocent man not put to jail for the rest of his life because there's clear evidence that shows him that he was acting in self-defense. And yet it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Because the narrative has to be pushed.
Yeah.
That's what's sad about this case.
Thank you for that explanation. It truly is a sad time. I'm just wondering, we talked about praying. It might be maybe unclear how we can pray for, or in a situation like this, what we even pray for. So how would you advise us on how we can pray during this time?
So this is what Al Mohler says too, and I tend to agree with him a lot. But he says it does matter how you act after you pray, but he specifically says it does matter how you vote.
Mm.
You're a Christian. You also are a citizen. I mean, it's a Christian duty to be a good citizen. And so one of the duties of a citizen is to vote. So it's to go out there and vote, and to vote Christian values, I suppose. You got to use your moral compass and vote
Yeah.
right. When you don't vote, or when you vote like someone with views antithetical to the Christian faith, like abortion, perhaps, those are things that are really troublesome to me.
Yeah.
And you could be like, let's have a discussion. What about helping the poor? And so, yeah, let's have a discussion. It's really important that we have a discussion.
Yeah.
But don't just follow every left-wing policy and just say I'm a Christian when every single left-wing policy is antithetical to the Christian faith. And it can be covered up as Christian, like Pete Buttigieg is the one that started to preach in one of his interviews about how Christians who don't believe in gay marriage don't know the Bible or something to that effect. And I was shocked. Or he also started preaching about immigration. Well, doesn't the Bible say we need to love the stranger in the land? And so, this is what Christians believe. And so these are things that I feel like the nominal Christian would have no answer to. That's why we must be informed. We must know the truth. I want you guys to know about immigration. I want you guys to know about, what it means to have a presumption of innocence and why that it is biblical. We find it in the Pentateuch, right? And why this country adopted our laws based on the moral laws that we saw in the Bible, and why that's why this country was led to a place of thriving. And so, yeah, we don't want to go back to a place where we're like sacrificing our children, like in the days of Moloch and things like that.
Yeah.
Which is just horrible. It's horrifying what's going on right now. But yeah, number one, always be in prayer and pray for the leaders of our country. And I would pray like Martin Luther prayed, where he prays that God would change the hearts of our leaders. And at the time, he wrote Kings. But he prayed that God would change the heart of the kings, and if not, for God to quickly remove those kings.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I think that's a good prayer. I think that's a wise prayer. We can't have evil men continue to lead this nation and expect the nation not to suffer. And so I think our current president released a statement saying how he was angry.
Yeah.
Do you have that statement in front of you? I sent it to you.
Yep, I do. Let me pull that up. This is a statement by President Biden, issued yesterday, the 19th. While the verdict in Kenosha will leave many Americans feeling angry and concerned, myself included, we must acknowledge that the jury has spoken.
That's it. I mean, that's what it is. He said, myself included. He's angry and concerned.
Yeah.
And it's very troubling, to say the least, that he should know better. I mean, He should know better. He's the president of the United States. He should have all the information that we have, plus more in front of him.
Right.
And yet he still chooses to put out, a press release like that. But yeah, I mean, those are things that I hope people will get to understand, that what we're seeing, some of these reactions are absolutely disgusting, and we should not ever like condone some of the actions out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like saying, well, I think that's what they're trying to do. Some people, not everybody, some people are trying to put in, like, I don't know, Rosenbaum as heroes. Like,
Yeah. I mean, people portray
they call
them.
him JoJo now and things like that. I mean, the dude was a child rapist.
Yeah.
And I misspoke before. It was 9 to 14. It was 9 to 11 boys.
Mm.
Yeah, it's incredibly disgusting. It's incredibly sad that we're going to put these people up as heroes now.
Yep.
Where are we that we would do something like that? And so I hope that, if we have friends like that, if you have people, I think that's one of the things that was mentioned to me. What if you have people? What if you have family members and you're
Right.
going to meet them for Thanksgiving and they're on, this really, really very left side, right? How do we respond? How do I pray for them? Should I respond at all? Things like that. And I think that's where wisdom comes into play. You got to be wise. Yeah, people, like, even with what I know, I don't go around picking fights at every single thing I disagree with.
Mm-hmm.
That will be a huge waste of time.
Mm-hmm.
You have to look for opportunities. You have to always be in prayer.
Yeah.
And in the end, if you want to engage someone, it would be because of love, not because you want to be right or you want to exude your anger, right?
Right. Thank you for that response. Like you said, it is in love that we respond. And unfortunately, we've seen a plethora of people respond angrily, out of emotion, erratically. And it's just been pretty discouraging to see. But as Christians, like you said, we should be praying and we should be responding in love. So thank you for that reminder. Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about that we haven't discussed, Pastor Eugene?
You said you had something about the case, no?
No, I just had the
last one that you want to talk about?
The last one? No. I mean,
Okay.
I just had, the summary of the case and just kind of the reactions from that, and just wanted to talk about how we should react as Christians.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to see reactions more and more unfold. Like Mayor de Blasio came out and de Blasio came out and said Anthony Huber and Joseph Rosenbaum are victims. They should be alive today.
Yep.
And so he made this remark. And then if you look at his Twitter page, it's just all these people like condemning his remarks.
Yeah.
It's so uninformed.
Yeah.
I don't know if you watched any of the trial, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And so people are telling me, like, if you saw that beginning of the trial, you saw, like, even the witnesses that the prosecutor put on the stand, like, Gage Grosskreutz, right?
Yeah.
Like, he admitted while he was testifying that he was only shot because he pointed a gun at him. Like, under oath, he testified.
Mm-hmm.
And so what case does the prosecutor have? And so I think the biggest case that they had that they were trying to make is, and some people are arguing that I've heard, that he shouldn't have been there.
Right.
Like,
right.
him being there is instigating violence. He
Mhm.
shouldn't have been at the protest and things like that. And so let's just take a step further and think about it. Whether you agree he should have or shouldn't have been there, the case was there are going to be riots. There have been riots. There's destruction of property. People are asking for help to come, and adults are not going. So this young man, basically a boy, he goes armed, but he goes to protect people's property, which I think is a commentary about our society where the police don't show up, the National Guard isn't showing up, the adults don't show up. So we have to have children go and defend our property because these rioters are destroying people's livelihoods.
Yeah.
And then these politicians are now protecting the rioters, calling
Right.
them protesters. Look, you can protest all you want, but once you start damaging property or like hurting people, it's not a protest anymore.
Mhm.
Now you're um, in violent territory. You're in riot territory, right?
Mhm.
And that is unlawful, and you
Right.
can't do that.
Right.
Instead of the government upholding the law, they're letting it go for some crazy notion that black people should not keep the law.
Mm.
You know,
Yeah.
so justice isn't blind anymore. It's color preferential
Yeah.
because we think that it has always been white preferential. So we're just gonna do it the other way around, and we're just gonna give preference. So we're gonna fight injustice with injustice, and so those are things where you see when government officials are promoting stuff like this. Is a very sad state of affairs that we're in that we have to acknowledge. Um, One person, Owen Strand, he's someone that we follow. He had written on his Twitter account when the verdict came out that we should praise God for his common grace because every once in a while we do see justice being, served,
Mm.
and we should thank God for that.
Mm.
The whole point is, was Kyle Rittenhouse innocent? Did he, whether he should have been there or not, that's not the case. The case is, did he defend himself
Mm.
from being shot? And if he did, then he's innocent of these charges, right?
Or for being harmed. Yeah.
Yeah. So then that's it. That should be the thing. Why are you talking about something else? And what we don't want to do is we don't want to victim blame. And I told you this too, but I was telling you yesterday. Oh, what's the difference between me saying this he shouldn't have been there here when he thought it was okay? Like, he didn't know any better, maybe, but he thought it was okay because he was invited, his father was there, whatever the reason was. He was with a group of people, maybe they were separated. I mean, they were
Yeah.
with a young woman walking down a dark alley. And then what if she was sexually assaulted? Would you blame the woman first?
No.
Would you say maybe it wasn't wise to walk down a dark alley late at night when you don't know what could be there? It could be a dangerous area. You might say that.
Sure.
You might, right? But your first instinct wouldn't be to blame the woman. That's
Right.
what you get, right?
Right.
That's a crazy notion. It shouldn't be that way. I get it. It shouldn't be that way, and then that's why we warn people to act wisely. But you wouldn't go first to victim blaming. You wouldn't blame the person that was assaulted, right?
Right.
And so that to me is kind of backwards, that when some people are like, well, he shouldn't have been there. I was like, well, that's secondary.
Yeah.
To me, that's secondary. First, let's look at what happened. Did he really defend his life? It was a self-defense. And if it was, then we could talk about what's secondary, but place what's secondary as secondary. Don't
Yeah.
put it as primary. That's
Yeah.
unwise. And in fact, takes away from your credibility. The more you talk like that, it takes away from your credibility.
Thank you for that. I think, it's extremely helpful for us. Just kind of hearing this. I think, because we're just so flooded with information that we see that is kind of radical now. It's just not right anymore. And so it is definitely helpful for us to hear something like this. Just seeing this from a neutral point, I guess, if there even is a neutral point anymore. But thank you for that response.
Yeah, and people are asking, like, what are some sources that you could look at?
Yeah.
Do you have any responses to that? So people have been asking, what can I look at if I'm not just looking at certain forums or
Yeah.
like Reddit forums or things like that? Is there a source that we can go to? Do you have any place?
So, I mean, what I did for this episode is I just read whatever I could get my hands on, pretty much, whether it was conservative, left-leaning, right-leaning. I just try to read everything and try to compare notes, pretty much. But I know that there's that website that you showed me before, Real Clear Politics, that I also looked at. But that would just be my suggestion. Just read across the board.
Yeah, I follow independent journalists. Like, one is Andy No. Last name is spelled NGO.
NGO, yep.
And so I follow him. He actually always goes undercover. So his life is always on the line when he does this. And he follows Antifa.
Ah, okay.
And then that's why we had the footage of what the Antifa attacking the Christians at the spa incident in LA.
The Wii Spa.
The Wii Spa, yeah. So they would methodically separate this Christian group, and once they're separated into individuals, they would attack them.
Mm.
Like this person was hit on the head with a skateboard too. Yeah, they were maliciously attacked, just for standing there saying, "Repent, Jesus is, Jesus is Lord."
Yeah.
They would come and do that. So Andy No would have a lot of these footages and things like that. So those are certain people that I follow. There's a few more. You could always ask me personally who I
Mm.
follow and why. But yeah, I think if you only get your news from legacy media sources, then you most assuredly do not have the full picture.
Yeah.
If you only get it from, let's say, internet forums, that might be rough too. That's why someone like you read both. They read both.
Mm.
One place that, if you don't know already, that we've mentioned is a podcast called Morning Wire.
Yep.
It's by the Daily Wire company, which is a right-leaning company. They make they don't hide that ball.
Right.
But Morning Wire is they just give you the facts about what's going on,
Mm-hmm.
and very little to no commentary on it, right?
Yeah, it's been
And so,
helpful.
yeah, you could take like 20 minutes every morning to listen if you really don't want to spend too much time on politics and you just want to be informed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I sent the Rittenhouse video to the verdict to my wife,
Mm.
and then she's like, "Who's this?" So, I mean, you could be in a place where you have no idea about what's going on in Kyle Rittenhouse. Maybe you tuned in, you're like, I have no idea what's going on. And that's fine too, to be honest. That's totally fine. But if you start seeing riots and protests here in our area, then you'll know why. Because obviously Brooklyn is not so far away that it's completely outside. And we've had these kind of protests calling for violence right across the bridge too.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Any other comments that you wanted to add at the end, Pastor
No, I
G?
think I mean, if you want to come talk to me or Sam, you're more than welcome to. I think after I mentioned this to a few people did want to talk to me. Some people were actually shocked that this information was there. I talked to some people before; they had no idea of what was actually said in these the court hearings, and like the prosecution's case and stuff like that, and the defendant's case and things like that. They didn't have any idea. They only saw the snippets from the news. So when they found out about this, they were completely shocked. So yeah, you're more than welcome to talk to me at any time. You could always email us at podcast with any of your thoughts, and we promise to keep it anonymous and confidential, right?
Yeah.
And then that'll inform how we respond to a certain degree in our podcasts.
Yeah.
So please do that. We're very thankful for the responses that we get. That's why we can, give you information like we do here.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I don't even know if we would have done this podcast, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this was kind of like a impromptu emergency recording here Saturday morning. So yeah, definitely. Please email us at podcast@cgsnj.org if you have any questions, concerns, or comments. With that being said, we thank you for listening to this episode of the Dear Church podcast. Join us on Monday as we talk about how to give thanks in a thankless world. We hope and pray that this has been a blessing in your ears. As always, and until the end of time, we love you. We miss you.
Bye.
Bye.